Welcome to Cinema Convos. This is the show where we bring guests with different tastes in film. I'm your host, Yash, and I'm here with my producer, Zach, and our special guest, Price. And today we are discussing the film The Social Network from 2010, which was directed by David Fincher and was written by Aaron Sorkin. And it was also starring Jesse Eisenberg, Andrew Garfield, and Armie Hammer, and Justin Timberlake. And before we get started, just wanted to issue a quick spoiler warning. We will get into the plot points of this movie, so we recommend watching the movie before checking out this episode. And with that, our first question today is, for Price, is what's your first memory or best memory with this movie?
Ooh, great question. I would say like the first time I watched this movie, it was with you, Yash, in college when we'd all get together like freshman year and have a movie night, like with Alex and the others. And yeah, it wasn't a movie that I watched when it came in theaters. Like it was a movie that I didn't see until probably 4 years after, but just became a big fan of the movie at that point. Just something I always love revisiting. And it's the kind of movie that if it's on TV, I can watch it from whatever point it is until the end. And if it's like on Netflix, I'll just randomly watch like 30 minutes of it during a lunch break or something. But overall, I would say my best memory is that first watch with all of us, just experiencing the movie for the first time and just getting to learn more about that story.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Zach?
So seeing it for the first time, I actually saw this movie when it came out in the theater. It was 2010. I was 13 when I saw this for the first time. And that was the first time and only time I'd watched it for a while. And I'd seen it in passing. That was one of those movies like when I see them on like TV. And that was one of those where I'd see it and watch some of it. But I watched it again a few days ago. I liked it a lot more this time because, I'm an adult.
Yeah, kind of bouncing off what you guys have said. Obviously, I did really enjoy watching it in the dorms in college. And it was funny because it wasn't until later in high school and early college where I started to truly appreciate this movie. Because the first time I saw it, I was like, 14 or whatever, 2010. And I remember thinking it was like kind of boring, like back then. And kind of went over my head a lot of the nuances of the movie. And it was pretty early on, like, that was around the time I was still discovering like how much I love cinema and movies. And all I knew about this movie was that it just got a lot of like awards buzz and good reviews. So my best memory is probably just when I started revisiting it like years later and kind of gradually started liking it more and more. And now I just think it's one of my favorite movies and, one of the best written movies ever, honestly. So yeah, it's just one of those movies I also just kind of watch all the time.
Mr. Zuckerberg, do I have your full attention?
No.
Do you think I deserve it?
I had to swear an oath before we began this deposition, and I don't want to perjure myself, so I have a legal obligation to say no.
Okay, no. You don't think I deserve your attention?
I think if your clients want to sit on my shoulders and call themselves tall, they have a right to give it a try, but there's no requirement that I enjoy sitting here listening to people lie. You have part of my attention. You have the minimum amount. The rest of my attention is back at the offices of Facebook, where my colleagues and I are doing things that no one in this room, including and especially your clients, are intellectually or creatively capable of doing. Did I adequately answer your condescending question?
I thought it was very edgy when I was 14. I'm like, this is kind of a racy movie for me to be watching, to be honest. The most hilarious thing about this movie is that it's PG-13. The movie that beat it out for Best Picture is rated R for like 10 F-bombs or whatever, the King's Speech.
The King's Speech comparatively is so much more tame.
Yes,
because without that one scene, like I think it'd be PG, to be honest with you. It's just that one scene with F-bombs over and over again.
Yeah, we can't.
Also interesting that the King's Speech beat The Social Network for the Oscar, but when's the last time you've heard anybody talk about the King's Speech?
Yeah,
I know. The King's Speech was like the King's Speech is good, but like it doesn't have that legacy that The Social Network did.
To be honest, I think it was kind of an upset because I remember Social Network being like the front runner that year.
I remember it being not too much of an upset. I remember it was pretty well, for me at least. I remember it being, it shouldn't have happened, but I think we saw the writing on the wall. I think it had won some precursors and all that kind of stuff. So I think we had seen it. We know it shouldn't happen, but it's going to happen.
The King's Speech is more of the safe choice, I guess, for the Academy, knowing what they like.
And it's it really seems like Oscar bait. Oscars love stuff that happened around that era. The Academy loves movies about historical figures And historical figures overcoming any kind of obstacle, they love that.
Biopics and historical movies and movies about
Mhm.
Hollywood. They just love that stuff. Except when it's La La
Yeah.
Land.
Maybe in
Um,
50 years this will be historical enough to be considered a biopic about Zuckerberg. So maybe
True.
True.
it can
True.
become that historical legacy later.
Hmm.
True. It is also worth pointing out that the movies about Hollywood thing about Academy loving them. That's a phenomenon that only happened pretty recently, like in the past
Yeah.
5 years. Because historically, they actually would kind of ignore movies about Hollywood usually.
Yeah, it's more of a recent
then-
trend.
But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. Anyway.
Right. So, anyways, moving on with The Social Network. There's a lot of technical elements I really like in this movie, but what are some of your favorite aspects of the movie?
So I mean, I know like before shooting this, we talked about kind of like breaking it down between score, writing,
Mhm.
acting, editing, and directing. And honestly, like there's not one of those five that's a standout category for me. Like I think what
Mhm.
makes this movie so good is that it's just a combination of all those five things
Yeah.
working together. And I think it won an Oscar for like three of those five categories. Like in my opinion, it should have won all five. That's neither here nor
Mhm.
there. But I think just what's so great about it is just that it's all five of those things working so well. Like it's a director like
Mhm.
in his prime, like just bringing out one of his best movies, like Aaron Sorkin, who's some people consider to be like one of the best writers working in Hollywood, just
Oh, yeah.
combined with
I'm one of those people.
yeah,
I am
just
also one of those people.
combined with just an incredible score from Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. And
Mhm.
Yes.
that's a score that like in 2010 when it beat Inception for best original score, I was really upset about that because I was hugely into Inception back when that was in
Same.
theaters. But like over time though, I've realized how good the score is and how much it deserves that award. But I would say just like the combination of all those things and like how well they work together and how much time and effort they put into combining all of those aspects is probably my favorite thing.
Yeah, just real quick to bounce off of what you said there. I do think it encompasses all five of those really well, and I think the score is exceptional. Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor have worked with David Fincher multiple times, but I think this is the score that still stands out to me because I've seen it. I did go back and watch a few other David Fincher films recently, and it's funny because I was the same way. I mean, Inception is still the better movie for me personally. Just
Mhm.
because it's such a pivotal movie in my film career. But in terms of score, I do think The Social Network has the better score, and I understand now why it won. But I was similarly
Sure.
upset when Inception lost that Oscar.
But it is sort of interesting, like when you're comparing the
Mhm.
scores of Social Network and Inception.
Yeah.
But the Social Network in the movie compared to Inception, there's honestly a lot less happening. Inception, there's a lot of action going on. There's a lot of things going on. In Social Network is comparatively low action. I mean, it's a drama. Like it's not.
Yeah.
It's pretty grounded. But
Mhm.
I think the score for Inception, it's a big film, and I think the score feels really big.
Mhm.
The Social Network, the score feels small. The score is actually pretty simple, you
Mhm.
know, and it really is. It's not distracting. It's not overbearing. I think it fits the film really well.
Well,
And sort
what?
of bouncing off what you were saying, Bryce, about none of those five elements, none of them stand out above the rest. They really all work great in tandem, I think. And that's when you have a really complete film, is when all the elements in the film work together to make a great
Mhm.
complete piece. No, really, all five work together. Like, yes, there are films with better acting, there are films with better editing, but as a complete piece, there aren't as many films. There aren't a whole lot of films that all five of those elements work well and complement each other so well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
for sure. Just one quick thing about the score, real quick. I think I was reading online. This is also someone else's opinion that I truly agree with when I read it, but I can't remember the source of it, unfortunately. But one thing
Mhm.
the score of this movie does is it makes a lot of mundane activities exhilarating. Like
Yes.
for
Yeah.
example, like the business meeting with Sean Parker, that could have easily been a really boring and like kind of plain scene, but with the combination of just the dialogue and the way the score builds up and the way that they're conversing during the two lawsuits, it just works so well. And I think the score does a good job of creating the right emotion in every scene. there's lighter scenes, and then it immediately shifts to a darker tone at the right times, and it just works
Yeah.
really well.
I need the algorithm. I need the algorithm.
Give each girl a base rating of 1400. At any given time, girl A has a rating RA and girl B has a rating RB.
When any two girls are matched up, there's an expectation of which will win based on their current rating, right?
Yeah. And those expectations are expressed this way.
Let's write it.
Continuing to talk about the score, like it is probably my most played score, like on my Spotify playlist of instrumental songs. So like I listen to this all the time if I'm working on like a programming project or like just trying to get through the workday. Not that I'm doing anything close to the level, obviously, of like what Zuckerberg's doing to this music, but it does kind of help give me that sense of importance and like fits in the background nicely without being distracting, but also just being really satisfying to listen to.
For sure.
For sure.
It's great music to work with as background noise. Besides the score, one of the other aspects that we've already mentioned that I really want to get into is this was written by Aaron Sorkin, who is a very talented writer. Just naming some of the stuff he's written that I've seen that I really like. I've seen The Newsroom, Steve Jobs, Molly's Game, Moneyball, which he co-wrote, I believe, and then also most recently Trial of Chicago 7, which he also directed, as well as Molly's Game. So he's getting more into the directing game now, but he's most known for writing. And what I like about the dialogue in this movie, just real quick, and then I'll let you guys take the floor. First of all, in any movie, good writing is the base of any good performance. If the dialogue is not good, then the acting doesn't stand a chance. And my example for this is always an unrelated movie, but Attack of the Clones, Star Wars. Everyone goes after Hayden Christensen, but look at the things he's saying. They're not well written at all. He doesn't really stand a chance. But in this movie, from the very opening scene, it's going to be different in terms of the dialogue. Everything feels natural. Every emotion feels like genuine. And the things they're saying sound very conversational. It doesn't feel like it's a script. It feels like it's just people interacting. I think it's really well done. I think Aaron Sorkin's really good about doing that in all of his work.
I could talk for hours about how unfairly my man Hayden Christensen was treated in the prequel trilogy, but I know that's not our main topic. That's true. That's true. I know that's
redeem himself. He will redeem himself.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I mean, getting into the script by Sorkin, I mean, it's like I know I talked about all 5 aspects, but like just to highlight this one specifically, he does such a good job of writing scenes that go well together. And like it's a crazy long script and people are talking really fast, but you also don't feel like you miss anything in that. Like it's not too rushed to where he'll make a reference to a scene that was 3 scenes earlier and like the reference makes sense and you didn't forget it. And I feel like that's hard to do. Like normally in a movie, if they're throwing references around like that, it's going to be hard to follow. But I think Sorkin does such a good job with that. And something I found kind of researching this movie, I actually heard this from the Rewatchables podcast. Shout out to that. But
hit us up, Rewatchables.
Yeah.
Let's collab.
Yeah, hit up Yash if you have any questions. But
I'd love to chat with you guys.
Something that I heard on there was that a normal movie script, it's about 1 page for every minute of runtime. And this script is 160 pages long for 120 minutes of the movie. So he's just moving so quickly through that dialogue, but like it also feels natural and fits the pace of the story too. So I think that's a nice balance.
Yeah, Jesse Eisenberg speaking like a mile a minute in every scene he's in.
Yeah, he is.
But it works. It works for this character for sure.
Talking about Aaron Sorkin, kind of going off sentiments. I do believe that he is one of the, if not the greatest writer working today. And you mentioned a lot of his movies that he did. Before that, he did a lot of TV as well. He made his name known with West Wing. And that was the first time really where you had a drama like that. The dialogue was so sophisticated and was coming at you so fast. And it was something that Aaron Sorkin's also known for. Did well with the West Wing, kind of made almost his trademark, is that scenes where people are walking and talking at the same time, and that's kind of a big trademark of his. Like you'll have people just walk, through an entire hallway, and they're just like talking a mile a minute, hitting all the dialogue off. And that's really interesting. And I see a little bit of that in this movie, but I think that's interesting. Sorkin trademark. And the other thing I do want to say about Sorkin is less to do with this movie, more about Aaron Sorkin's credits. I think his first show was a show a lot of people don't remember, Sports Night. And it was like a sitcom on ABC in the 90s. And it's basically about, sportscasters and ESPN like channel. In that, you would see a lot of Aaron Sorkin's early trademarks. The walking and talking, I'm talking about the super fast dialogue, how the scenes tie together, how you can mention, you were talking about Price, but you can mention an earlier scene, but you didn't forget that scene. So that's a good show. It did have a laugh track, which I should say Sorkin fought hard against and hated it. Almost, I hear he kind of doesn't like watching the show now because of that freaking laugh track, which was not his choice. It was ABC's. But even despite that, I think you can still see the shades of Sorkin that this was when his brilliance was just starting.
How could you have been married to Steve Sisko all those years and know nothing about
I
sports?
think Neil Armstrong's wife was an expert in astropropulsion.
I think she's heard of the moon.
Sports isn't what I do for a living.
What do you do for a living?
What?
What do you do exactly?
You know exactly what I do.
You're a market analyst.
Yes.
What does that mean?
I analyze the market.
Keep going.
I analyze conditions and trends and make recommendations to protect and improve this company's position in the global financial community. That's what I do.
You don't really know, do you?
I do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, what's interesting is there are a lot of movies out there where I find them boring because they're dialogue heavy, but none of them are an Aaron Sorkin project. I look forward to the scenes with dialogue when Aaron Sorkin's behind the wheel because the dialogue is so interesting and it's so relevant to the plot. It's never just a filler moment. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, moving on from, obviously Aaron Sorkin wrote the script and it's a genius script, Oscar-winning script. But this was an effort of two people. I mean, we had David Fincher as director, and what's interesting about David Fincher is, a lot of his movies tend to be about very dark and gritty subject matter, and this movie obviously isn't violent like those movies, or it's not like Gone Girl or The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo or that type of thing, Fight Club 7, but it still has a way of getting under your skin by the time it ends that I think goes back to the theme of the movie, how Zuckerberg kind of screws over Eduardo Saverin by the end of it, and it makes you wonder I don't know, I just wanted to see what you guys thought about some of the themes in this movie, if they stand out to you, and also David Fincher's directing style, if there's anything you wanted to mention there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Fincher is such an important half of that pair in creating the movie, and you were talking earlier about how Sorkin's kind of getting into doing both jobs of writing and directing, but I mean, I would argue that Fincher can get more out of Sorkin's writing with this example than Sorkin can sometimes get out of his own writing. I would imagine
Sorkin's still very new to directing, and he's only directed 2 films. He's not bad at it, but there's nothing the movies that he's directed. I still look at the screenplay, and that's what blows me away.
But I think of something where it's like Molly's Game, where it has a great script, and I liked the movie but didn't love it, and then this movie with an amazing script, and it's just so well executed with the directing that it brings so much more out of it. But anyway, yeah, but with Fincher's directing and kind of the different subject matters that he's dealt with before, I mean, one example I think of is Gone Girl, that also a movie watched in college that's
we watched
just
it together.
such a grittier subject than this one. But I mean, he still kind of has some of the same techniques, just with a different storyline. I mean, we can watch Mark Zuckerberg sitting behind his computer and just writing code, but it'll feel like it's one of the most important things that you've ever watched because of how it's shot. And it still contains those dark story elements, even if it's just, with different stakes. We'll watch those intense scenes of betrayal between Mark and Ed Saverin, and one of the scenes that I really like, even if some people might not think it fits into the story perfectly, is that scene of the rowing competition in England that just appears out of nowhere, but you get to watch just this gritty rowing match. So yeah, I mean, just overall, I think the directing style is so good and fits in so well with the writing, just to bring the most out of the story.
For sure. I definitely think Fincher's good at exploring, I guess, the dark side of human nature very well in all of his movies that I've seen. And,
Absolutely.
This movie is no exception. It's obviously not as disturbing as some of his other work, but it also is it is a movie that sticks with you. What the final moments when Eduardo Saverin confronts Mark Zuckerberg. It's not particularly easy to watch. It just kind of goes south from there, but it also is it's riveting acting. And that's this movie has so many technical elements that are so good. And I truly believe, Andrew Garfield, I don't think he was nominated that year, and I think he was robbed.
He wasn't.
Not, because he was so good in this movie. I mean, this was his breakout role as far as I know.
It was.
He has done some work, but I mean, this is the movie that got him Spider-Man, to be honest. I don't know. So, and then Jesse Eisenberg is he's very good at playing this like very like neurotic and like fast talking like nerdy guy. And I think he's perfectly cast here. Everyone across the board is really good. Rooney Mara is really good in this movie. Who else is Justin Timberlake is exceptional in this movie. And he's not even known for acting.
They'll hire private detectives who will follow you day and night. You're a target for high-priced escorts. I can't prove it, but I know they tap my phones. Whatever it is that's gonna trip you up, you've done already. Private behavior is a relic of a time gone by, and if somehow, someway you've managed to live your life like the Dalai Lama, they'll make shit up, because they don't want you. They want your idea.
I think he plays it really well. And also to go back about Jesse Eisenberg, he isn't a guy you would think who would read a drama like this. But I think he got it because he matched the character so well. And I think he fits perfectly in this film. I wouldn't say he's a terribly good, dramatic actor, but he does it really well because he really plays the character of Mark Zuckerberg well. He really gets his essence down. And I say he's not a particularly good dramatic actor because, well, he hasn't really done a whole lot of good drama work.
I mean, he's known for comedy, particularly.
Yeah, but even in the things when he has done a non-comedic role, then it really hasn't been good.
It's hard to come down from the top of that mountain where you're working with Fincher and Sorkin and with that score, and he's just given such amazing material and he runs with it and executes it perfectly. And I would kind of like to see him in more parts with such incredible writing and directing, but I just don't know if he's picked those scripts in his career since then. I mean, this movie was such a launching point for Garfield, Timberlake, Armie Hammer, Rooney Mara. Even you could argue that, even if she's only in 10 minutes of the movie.
Her role is pretty consequential, but it's small. But she acts the hell out of it. So I wonder if David Fincher, like you said, she got his attention and be like, I have a role you'd be perfect for. That's it. She got Girl Dragon that too. I imagine that's how something like that went down.
Okay, you are probably going to be a very successful computer person. You're going to go through life thinking that girls don't like you because you're a nerd. And I want you to know from the bottom of my heart that that won't be true. It'll be because you're an asshole.
Also, if any Hollywood executives are listening, you guys need to let David Fincher finish his Dragon Tattoo trilogy. It's not right. It was a good movie, but they took the franchise in a different direction and didn't let him finish his story. So I'm like, wow.
Sure they're listening. I'm sure.
If you're listening, you never know. Okay.
I know.
Also,
it's a good point. You got to be optimistic.
You gotta dream big, Zach. But also shout out to Armie Hammer for playing two characters in this movie. They genuinely do feel like two different people, I think, which is a nice.
I think they do.
Which is a statement to how well he's acting, because it's the same guy, but one of the brothers is more aggressive and one of them is more oh, we're men of Harvard. Yeah, do the right thing.
Also, just a statement to the editors, how they made that so seamless with them both being in the room at the same time. Because the first time I saw this, I was like, oh, I didn't know Armie Hammer was a twin, and then found out that was not the case. So
it was incredible how they did that. It really is incredible how you can make it so I do know, not sure the capacity, they use the stand-in for some scenes, but I'm not exactly sure how that exactly worked. But I do know that when you're watching the movie, it does seem like those are two different people standing next to each other.
And shout out to the Parent Trap for making me think Lindsay Lohan was a twin when I was a child.
Yeah.
Similar technique there, but
true.
The only real twins in any movie or show are Dylan and Cole. Let's just be honest. Yep. That was mostly a joke. I'm sure there's other twins.
Harry Kate and Ashley Olsen. Well, see, you forget they're twins because they're most iconic role. They play the same person, but they're twins.
It's true.
Yeah.
I wonder what it'd be like to have a twin. What if you had a
y'all need to do an episode with a pair of twins talking about a movie.
You know any twins, Josh?
Zach, I thought you might have just the pair for us. I don't know. I don't have anyone. Let's find a pair of triplets and get them on.
Hey, you could hit up Lewis for it.
Was there anything else you guys wanted to speak on in terms of any of the actors or performances in this movie?
Brenda Song.
Brenda's song is wild in this movie. London
She
Ticket
is
crazy.
crazy. She like starts a fire in Eduardo's apartment. Like, I don't like your scarf.
It's like this
I
movie
don't
came out in
watch
2010. 1 minute I'm watching Sweet Life on Deck, and then I put on The Social Network, and she's just completely different. See her in a new
And
light.
she does things. I wonder what isn't he thought of this? Be like, we have a talk.
And he's like, I don't know. We gotta finish this series quick. These kids are growing up.
I feel like the main purpose of her character is just the payoff with that line when Ed goes to visit California
Yeah.
and Mark is asking him, he's like, oh, like how's she doing? And Ed Savard just goes like, oh, she's crazy, it's a disaster. And then Mark goes like, oh, still must be nice to have a girlfriend though. And
It's
Ed just
basically
like
how
looks
bros
at him like
talk.
it's the dumbest thing he's ever heard. But
That's the
I was
whole
like,
reason.
if like that line, that's such a good line, and if that's like the payoff from having her in the movie, I'll take it.
So how is Christy? Christy's crazy. Is that fun?
No, she's actually psychotic. She's insanely jealous. She's irrational, and I'm frightened of her.
Still, it's nice you have a girlfriend.
Yeah, and I think she adds to the meeting Sean Parker scene a little bit. Some more comedic
Yes.
moments.
Yeah.
Also, someone else I want to talk about, Rashida Jones. She's like, she really isn't a big part of the movie until the past 5 minutes or so. But I feel like she's one of those characters. She's an interesting character because I feel like she almost exists for the purposes of speaking for the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And then because you're hearing this whole story, you're hearing everything. And then in the last 5 minutes of the film, Rashida Jones, who almost is a representative of the audience, having heard the story, I don't know.
Sure.
I thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else to add on that?
I mean, yeah, I mean, Rashida Jones is obviously very talented. This movie, she has more of a smaller role, but after recently watching Parks and Rec, she's shown she has a lot of range and talents. And yeah, I mean, I agree.
Yeah.
Like her character is kind of like the audience because she's just kind of sitting in. She's not even really a lead on the case. She's just working for the firm. And one thing about this movie that went over my head when I was younger is you kind of have to watch it attentively because it's not that apparent unless you're paying attention that 2 lawsuits are going on during the movie. Like you have to like kind of zone in and watch the movie, which I really respect. I mean, it respects the audience to not watch it casually. Listen to what they're saying.
Yeah.
Moving on, let's see. As you talk a lot about the performances and technical elements of this movie, but I wanted to ask, what is your favorite scene in this movie, and why is it your favorite scene, and break it down.
Yeah, so at least like in my opinion, this is a pretty easy question for me. But I would say just that opening breakup scene leading into like the montage of him coding Face Mash, just like that whole extended part is probably like the most rewatchable and my favorite part of the movie. Just like the way that you get to see the personal side of him, where it's like how socially deficient he is and like how poorly he treats other people, and then just moving in to see like how much of a technical genius he is and like how he can just get all that coding done in one night, like get it spread out to the whole school in the way that he crashes the network. Just that whole extended scene just does such a good job of telling you who Mark is and getting you excited for the rest of the movie, knowing like what's to come and how we'll like build a business going from there.
First up is Kirkland. They keep everything open and allow indexes in their Apache configuration, so a little wget magic is all that's necessary to download the entire Kirkland Facebook. Kid stuff.
Real quick, just about that opening scene, I think it's also one of the best scenes. It definitely, one theme that scene kind of explores is like the dangers of the web, to be honest, because you see how different people react to his website that he creates. And it's not always like, oh, this is hilarious. These are real people that you're putting side to side and comparing. And I guess the ethics of all of that comes into play. But for me, my favorite scene, it's hard to pick one. When Eduardo confronts Mark at the end and just smashes his laptop, that's an incredible scene in terms of all the technical elements. But as I mentioned earlier, the scene where they meet Sean Parker, I think that's an impressive scene just because of how the score elevates the scene and makes it interesting. But
True.
my overall opinion on the scenes in this movie, it's hard to pick just one. There are many great moments that I look forward to when I watch this movie. But I
True.
wanted to see, Zach, did you have a favorite scene?
So yeah, that scene that you're talking about when Eduardo confronts Mark, that's a great scene. And it just kind of, that really just shows how much that, like, Mark really screwed him. Managing his stocks to almost nothing, basically rendering him not part of the company anymore because of a personal grudge he had.
You issued 24 million new shares of stock.
You were told that if new investors
How
came
much
along...
were your shares diluted? How much were his?
What was Mr. Zuckerberg's ownership share diluted down to?
It wasn't.
What was Mr. Moskowitz's ownership share diluted down to?
It wasn't.
What was Sean Parker's ownership share diluted down to?
It wasn't.
What was Peter Thiel's ownership share diluted down to?
It wasn't.
And what was your ownership share diluted down to?
0.03%.
And one thing about that scene, it's a scene where you find out why Eduardo is suing him, because you really don't know until that moment, because they're in this lawsuit room together and you just have no idea why he's upset with him. You know he did something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think it's a great way to reveal that. And also, this is kind of like more of a personal thing, but you know, I really did not like Sean Parker at this point in the movie at all. And I'm like, Andrew Garfield, like, punch him in the face. I was so ready.
Sure.
But like what he does instead is honestly like the words speak volumes, and how he just looks at him and says, I like you, Sean. You make me look so tough, and just walks off. I'm like, that is just baller status. That is so cool.
That is great.
You did it. I knew you did it. You planted that story about the chicken.
I didn't plant the story about the chicken.
What's he talking
You
about?
had me accused of animal cruelty.
Seriously, what the hell's the chicken?
And I'll bet what you hated the most is that they identified me as a co-founder of Facebook, which I am. You better lawyer up, asshole, because I'm not coming back for 30%. I'm coming back for everything.
And it seemed like in that scene, it was clear that, like, I mean, like, as a business partner, Sean and Eduardo are two opposites, two different paths coming and going if you choose them as a business partner. And that scene, like, Mark chose Sean, and even then, he's not really thrilled about it. You know, it's not something he takes a whole lot of pleasure in. I mean, sure he does a little bit, but,
like right after that whole confrontation happens, like, you know, Sean Parker gets in some trouble and calls Mark, and Mark almost has a moment of realization of what he's done by choosing Sean. It's like it's too late to go back, but it's
exactly no. That scene might be one of my favorite scenes. Just him,
it's up there for me too.
Talking to him on the phone, he's like instant regret. And then what I love is he has those like business cards, something that Sean no doubt came up with or influenced.
Well, he mentions it at the nightclub. Remember that
stuff? Yeah. That reeks. Yeah, that's something that Sean. That's his thing, and I love. He takes that. He slowly crumbles it up. That's kind of a rejection.
Those cards are actually real too. Like, that's actually what Mark Zuckerberg's first set of business cards really said on them. I mean,
really?
a lot of the movie is not the most truthful story of what actually happened, but that part being real is pretty interesting.
It's a strong dramatization of true events, but it's a great movie, and that's what matters at the end of the day. And you know, there's some truth to it because the lawsuits were real. So some you know, this movie always makes me wonder because Mark Zuckerberg is pretty outspoken about how much he hates this movie because he thinks it's like pure fiction. But if you look into it, some of these things are true, and he might be just recovering his bases. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a great movie, regardless.
You know, so there's all this stuff that they got wrong and a bunch of random details that they got right. The thing that I think is actually most thematically interesting that they got wrong is, I mean, the whole framing of the movie, kind of the way that it starts is, I'm with this girl who doesn't exist in real life, who dumps me, which has happened in real life a lot. And basically they frame it as if the whole reason for making Facebook and building something was because I wanted to get girls or wanted to get into some kind of social institution. It's such a big disconnect from, I think, the way that people who make movies think about what we do in Silicon Valley, building stuff, right? Like, they just can't wrap their head around the idea that someone might build something because they like building things.
I don't know if this is a topic that we want to get into, but like, I think it's interesting how much the context behind the story has changed between 2010 and now. Like at the time of the movie, this was, I mean, still a huge company, like $50 billion company, but now it's worth, I think, over 10 times as much. I don't know the exact numbers, but
Yeah.
I mean, now, like,
company.
I feel like a lot of people just saw Mark Zuckerberg at the time as like this upstart, like nice kind of nerdy guy, like
Yeah.
billionaire. Like the movie kind of changed that, but now the public sees him in a lot different way. Like he's the Facebook guy. He's the guy that's always like going in front of Congress, like having to defend himself for either like censoring free speech or like allowing disinformation on his site or all these kind of different things. So like it's become like an interesting thing because now he's such a big face that's out there and has so much more money than he used to. And like Facebook has grown so much since this movie came out. So it's interesting that it's something that's still so relevant and a part of the public discussion and not like one of those companies that came up and then fell down as quickly as it came up.
It's not like
That's true. He's a guy.
Not like a Napster situation.
Yeah, it's not like a Napster situation.
Yeah, I mean, there's that line in the movie where they talk about like you were there at the same time as 2 Olympians and a movie star and 16 Pulitzer Prize winners or something, and the Crimson was always talking about you. Like I don't know the exact line, but it was something like that. And but now just thinking it's like, well, obviously like Mark Zuckerberg would be the main story of that class at Harvard, just given the fame and money that he has now. Like it's not even a question. But
for sure.
Yeah, and one thing about how Facebook has changed since this movie has come out, one thing I think is really funny in the movie when they're building the site, you know, Eduardo's like, we should put ads on the site, it'll make money. And Mark Zuckerberg was like, no, it's cool. We don't want ads. And now like Facebook is just full of ads all the time. And
It's so ads.
So it's interesting because like Mark is in the movie, at least he's so against like advertising, and even Sean Parker's like, you shouldn't put ads on there. And
I say it's time to start making money from the Facebook, but Mark doesn't want to advertise you. Who's right?
Neither of you yet. The Facebook is cool. That's what it's got going for it.
Yeah.
You don't want to ruin it with ads because ads aren't cool.
Exactly.
It's like you're throwing the greatest party on campus and someone saying it's got to be over by 11.
That's exactly.
It's like Facebook is such a, you know, there are careers out of just putting ads on Facebook now. Like I can speak for that personally, you know, in digital marketing world. And it's just so interesting how like something like this, you know, Facebook's constantly changing. This movie's 10 years old, but how will it look like 10 years from now? I'm sure Facebook will still be around in some capacity at this point.
Yeah. Oh, I do wonder how it's going to look because Facebook and like Google and Amazon, I wonder about those 3 companies specifically and how and what they're going to look like in the future. If they're going to own anything else, if they're going to get broken up or something, or if just I wonder what they're going to look like in 10 years. Something I do wonder about a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of think about some of the strategic moves that Facebook has made over the years, like acquiring Instagram. You know, like after this movie came out, it's one of the other things that have made them like kind of change with the times and continue their market dominance.
Absolutely.
It's nice to see a little glimpse of like classic Facebook at the end of the movie. This looks so different.
I love that ending scene because there's a caption right before the credits roll. That says Zuckerberg is the like humongous billionaire. Yeah, what is he doing? Refreshing his like Facebook page over and over again, waiting for someone to like respond.
For sure. I mean, sometimes we tend to put these people on a pedestal without realizing that they're just people at the end of the day who might have, you know, they might have come up with a brilliant idea, but they're still like, they still need the human things that all of us need.
Sure.
But yeah, one question I had specific to this movie, actually, I'm just curious on like, based on what the movie tells us, do you guys think the Winklevosses, do you think that they're justified in their actions, or like, are you kind of rooting against them while you watch it?
Ooh, that is an interesting question. Sidebar, I think they're both like worth over $1 billion now. Like they've made a ton of money in like cryptocurrency, which is crazy. But
of course they have.
Yeah, but like overall, I definitely think that Ed Saverin's case carries a lot more weight than theirs does. Like I feel like the Winklevosses are there largely for kind of comic relief and just there to like someone that you can kind of root against. But
yeah, when Zuckerberg calls him the Winklevi, I always crack up.
Yeah, like I definitely think that like Mark could have communicated with them better. You know, they have a little bit of a case and a reason to be upset, but I mean, I think Mark put it pretty well in the movie when he said like, if you were the inventors of Facebook, you would have invented Facebook. Like if they had the knowledge and the skills to like create what Mark did, like they would have done it themselves. And so many of the ideas were not even close to the product that they came up with.
Never lied to our faces.
Okay, he never saw our faces, fine. He lied to our email accounts, and he gave himself a 42-day head start because he knows what apparently you don't, which is that getting there first is everything.
I'm a competitive racer, Div. I don't think you need to school me on the importance of getting there first. Thank you.
All right. That was your father's lawyer?
This is in-house counsel. He's gonna look at all this, and if he thinks it's appropriate, he'll send a cease and desist letter.
What's that gonna do?
What, do you want to hire an IP lawyer and sue him?
No, I want to hire the Sopranos to beat the shit out of him with a hammer.
We don't even have to do that. That's right. We can do that ourselves. I'm 6'5", 220, and there's 2 of me.
And even even at one point when Andrew Garfield makes an appearance for the Winklevosses case, he just says like it really wasn't like their dating site like or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, and then they're just fuming. But yeah, I mean, it's personally like I agree that Mark definitely could have communicated better. But yeah, like he still came up with his own thing at the end of the day, and I think they were just going after him because they had the means to do so, to be honest. In the movie, at least. I don't know about real life. I don't want to speak on that.
And that scene where they're talking to the Harvard president is hilarious, too. Like, that's one of my favorite scenes.
Like, what do you want me to do about it? Everyone at Harvard's inventing something. Go invent something new. Oh, man.
You're like, oh, sorry, we ripped the doorknob off your 400-year-old door.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's a solid. The movie does have some solid comedic relief scattered throughout. I think,
yeah, for sure.
Makes it easy to watch.
It does.
So, real quick, wanted to ask, what genre do you define this movie as? Do you feel like it fits just one? And is there any movie that gives you a similar feeling or the same vibe?
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't really thought about it from this standpoint before, but I would almost have to say that it's like a thriller in a way, just because it's moving at such a fast pace, and it's just all the stories building off of each other, like building suspense, and you kind of given the start knowing there's a deposition, but you're trying to figure out what that's about and how we got to that point. And so I guess, kind of a mixture of biopic / thriller is what I would have to say.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has a thriller element, certain emotion. I mean, the way it's paced, and I think it's also a character study. It's also a legal drama, obviously, in some ways.
Yeah.
It encompasses a few genres for me, and I think some movies that it reminds me of are just movies where the main character is some figure who's historical, but also the movie's been dramatized. Just a couple movies that come to mind: A Beautiful Mind and The Imitation Game are 2 movies I think of.
For sure. They
center on like this genius person who came up with something, and it was a little different from everyone in terms like Mark Zuckerberg isn't really socially apt. He's kind of socially inept, which is kind of funny how he created a social networking site, but it's kind of the bitter irony of the situation, I guess.
Yeah. Like I probably consider this a legal thriller.
Yeah. I think
like some people think of legal thriller as the same as like a courtroom drama. This is about court cases. It's not, your typical judge and a jury. No, I mean, but it is about legal cases, and it does go through a lot of legal jargon, and so I think in a lot of ways it is a legal thriller.
Yeah,
and somewhat of a biopic, even though it's heavily dramatized.
Yeah,
I mean, you mentioned how like it's not like a courtroom drama, but I think the level of intimacy in like those scenes where like it's just a few people talking enhances this movie just because the movie is so dialogue oriented. And I think there's lots of intense moments where it's just some topic will come up, and it's just you can tell there's tension in the room from all angles, whether it's the 2 lawyers going head to head or just like Mark and the Winklevosses, or Mark and Ed Saverin have a lot of just like awkward tension, and that makes you wonder like it's clear early on why the Winklevosses are suing. I mean, they're like he stole our idea, whatever, but not knowing what Andrew Garfield is mad at him for keeps the movie moving at a very like quick pace.
Yeah.
You froze our account?
I did.
You froze the account.
I had to get your attention, Mark.
Do you realize that you jeopardized the entire company? Do you realize that your actions could have permanently destroyed everything I've been working on?
We have been working on.
Without money, the site can't function. Okay, let me tell you the difference between Facebook and everybody else. We don't crash ever. If the servers are down for even a day, our entire reputation is irreversibly destroyed.
Look,
users are fickle. Friendster has proved that. Even a few people leaving would reverberate through the entire user base. The users are interconnected. That is the whole point. College kids are online because their friends are online, and if one domino goes, the other dominoes go. Don't you get that? I am not going back to the Caribbean night at AE Pie.
So we talked about how this movie lost the Best Picture Oscar to The King's Speech, which is also a great movie in all respects. But, it's a movie that has like a 95 on Metacritic and is very well received. So I wanted to ask you, do you guys feel like this movie got the hype it deserved? And how does it compare from other movies from 2010?
Okay, so The Social Network, I'd probably say it probably should have won Best Picture that year.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I didn't like it as much as I have some other Best Picture winners, and in any other year, I probably wouldn't have picked it in a more competitive year. But I think it's the best out of that year of 2010. But also, like, Inception was that year, but I think this is still better than Inception. Black Swan, 127 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, The Fighter.
Yeah, I have my top 10 of the year for that year pulled up real quick. For 2010, my favorite movie was Inception, and then I also loved Toy Story 3. But then The Social Network.
That got nominated too.
It did. Third animated movie to get nominated for Best Picture.
Mm-hmm.
The seventh Harry Potter movie, The Fighter, The King's Speech, Scott Pilgrim, Kick-Ass, 127 Hours. All great movies, really strong year. But yeah, The Social Network, I think, in terms of how the critics responded to it, I think it was very reasonable. It's a great movie, and critics tend to have an eye for the technical elements, and it's well-deserved. I remember a lot of audiences the movie got kind of lost in the hype a little bit, but looking at it now 10 years later, I remember seeing an article about it saying that it was kind of harsh to The King's Speech. It was like, no one remembers The King's Speech, but everyone remembers The Social Network. So did it really deserve Best Picture?
I'll take your best movie of 2010 and raise you one more. I heard it called the movie of the decade, and I went through a bunch of lists looking for best movies of the 2010s. And to be fair, there's a number of them that I haven't seen, but I don't know if there's a movie in the 2010s that I like better than The Social Network, that like I enjoy watching this much, that like I think is like has all those 5 elements is good. So that's the hill that I'll die on, that it's the best of the 2010s of what I've seen.
It's honestly,
there are some movies that maybe put ahead from other decades, but
just because
that's the level that I'd put it on.
Just because I'm a nerd, I pulled up my decade list too. I have The Social Network on here. Actually, it's at my number 6 spot. But honestly, this list always moves around. I'll just name some.
What are the 5 ahead of it?
Okay, so I have Inception, The Dark Knight Rises, Deathly Hallows Part 2, The Help, The Wolf of Wall Street, and then The Social Network. And then the 4 after it are Toy Story 3, La La Land, 50-50, and Argo.
Yeah,
nice.
Those are all incredible movies. I would still put The Social Network at the top of that list, but like
The Social Network is. I will say one thing about The Social Network. It is one, and I kind of hinted at this earlier. It's one of those movies I love way more than when I initially watched it. And I think it goes to show that sometimes it's good to like revisit a movie you may not have liked when you were younger. Many movies improve as you get older and experience more in life.
True.
For sure. But yeah, it was 2010 was a great year, and beginning of a decade, not really the end.
But yeah, so kind of about like, yes, I think Social Network is the best movie of that year. I think it's stronger than The King's Speech. But honestly, it doesn't feel like one of those movies that wasn't going to win Best Picture anyway, because I feel like with the Academy, they don't look for the best movie every year. They look for the movie that like checks all of their boxes.
Yeah,
and
that's fair.
The King's Speech just had more of the boxes, and it checked more of the boxes that it satisfied more of the criteria that the Academy was looking for than The Social Network did.
Yeah.
But it joins the category like Citizen Kane, Saving Private Ryan, Brokeback Mountain, all films that arguably should have won their year, but they didn't, because there were movies that the Academy felt safer about, felt better about, and they wanted to award them instead. But we all remember those films, but we don't always remember the films that they beat.
And
so,
I would say, when we get to the conversation about overrated Oscar winners, for the most part, I've found them to be at least good movies. There are a few that I don't agree with that, but at the very least, The King's Speech is still a very solid movie, and it's not like they gave it to a bad movie that didn't deserve it at all. But I mean, one silver lining is that The Social Network did win Best Motion Picture Drama at the Golden Globes, so there is There's something there, I guess.
I mean,
but they also called Bohemian Rhapsody the best movie of 2018.
Golden Globes are the Golden Globes. I mean,
but they're also hit or miss because they gave The Hangover best comedy or musical. So
Golden Globes are
they win for me in that regard.
Have less prestige, and it's. I probably shouldn't say this is fact, but I'm gonna say it. There's a lot of evidence that Golden Globe wins or nominations have been gotten through unsavory means. Allegation. I'm not confirming anything.
Hollywood executives, stop listening.
Yeah, I feel like
I feel like a lot of that, and those allegations have been going on forever. I think that Sully's the Golden Globes were always the less prestigious one, and I just don't think they mean very much.
Yeah, and so something I kind of heard about the 2010 or I guess 2011 Oscars about 2010 movies on the rewatchables when they were talking about Social Network is that it kind of points to the dark side of Hollywood at the time because Harvey Weinstein's company was the one that created and was promoting the King's Speech. So it kind of points to the power that he had at the time and his ability to kind of lobby the different award shows to kind of get the outcome that he wanted. So.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't want to say about Harvey Weinstein. No, so the reason that the Academy film campaigns, that for your consideration campaigns, exist the way they do now is solely because of Harvey Weinstein. He made these Oscar campaigns into political campaigns. He pioneered them, and he was the best at them. He's the reason Shakespeare in Love won over Saving Private Ryan, because he started a campaign, like a kind of secret campaign within Hollywood to basically undermine the legitimacy of Saving Private Ryan and basically get it through the voters' heads that it's not a worthy film. He did that successfully. And if you can convince the majority of voters that a Shakespeare in Love is a superior film to Saving Private Ryan, then you can convince anybody of almost anything.
Yeah, and I think awards show processes can always be politicized, kind of in whatever way.
100%.
Producers and directors and people involved want to. So I'm glad that we do kind of still have the meritocracy of the lasting legacy of movies and how the audience remembers them. And the fact that just because Forrest Gump's good, but the fact that Shawshank doesn't beat Forrest Gump, but people still love Shawshank and still talk about it.
Shawshank is still number one to this day.
Yeah. So it's great that the audience can still have such an impact, even if it might not necessarily be what the producers want the legacy to be.
True. And also it should be worth pointing out that when you talk about how how the nominees win the Oscars, so every category except for Best Picture is decided the same way, with a simple ballot with all the nominees on there. Whoever gets the most votes is the winner. Best Picture decided through a ranked choice system. So the film that people liked the most, that more people liked the best, isn't always going to win. It's the people that the most people liked enough. So it's not the film that stands above the rest is going to win. The film that's going to stand above the rest is the compromise film, is that enough people were okay with. The reason La La Land lost is because a lot of people had it as their last pick. It's not a film. It wasn't a film that people were compromising at. I feel like The King's Speech has that very it's good, but it's fine. But some people will say Social Network, oh, it's great. A lot of people will, but I'm sure there's some people who, for whatever reason, said, oh, I hated it. I don't know why you'd say that, but I'm sure there were, and they put it at low on their ballot. And there's good reason to believe that The King's Speech did not have the highest amount of first place votes, but it was the compromise, and that's why it won. And that's true with a lot of films that won. You could honestly, and of course the Academy doesn't release the ballot results. There have been leaks and stuff, but you can see about certain years when there was clearly a better film, you can see why a lot of people wouldn't put that as their top pick when, this film is pretty middle of the road, kind of a crowd-pleasing film. Oh yeah, I could see how that one won. I think that's why I went with The King's Speech over Social Network.
I don't care how many royal assholes have sat
Listen to me! Listen to me!
Listen to you by what right?
By divine right, if you must. I'm your king.
No, you're not. You told me so yourself. You said you didn't want it. Why should I waste my time listening to
Because
you?
I have a right to be, and I have a voice!
Yes, you do.
It's happened before, and it'll continue to happen through the years, no doubt. But
unless there's a change in the system.
I mean,
but
it's you really can't foresee how a film is going to change over time and how its legacy is going to grow.
No.
You know, you can only they decide the year of. Okay, so one question I like to ask near the end of each episode is it's kind of a tougher question, but is there anything in the movie that you would change to improve it, or do you see it as a perfect movie?
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely don't see it as a perfect movie. I think it's pretty close, but I don't know if I would call any movie the perfect movie. But I would say like if there's one flaw to the movie, it's that I always enjoy like the first half more than I enjoy the second half. Like for me personally, like I just get more excited by that early stage of the business side, and then still at Harvard just trying to build up the business from nothing. I think the movie starts to kind of move like a little bit too fast to catch up with the story in the second half, where it's more about Mark in California and Sean Parker's role in the process and getting all the angel investors in. I think that like the movie just tries to do a little bit too much in that half compared to the first half, when it's a little bit more simple about more of just the building the business side. So I would say like if I do have a criticism, it's just that the second half isn't quite as strong as the first for me. But like with that being said, I still think like both halves are very good. Like they combine to make an incredible movie. And yeah, just overall, like if it's a criticism, it's a minor one.
That's fair. What about you, Zach?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's something. I don't know. The Winklevoss twins. I know Price had alluded to this earlier, how some people don't think the scene should be in the movie. And I tend to not really agree, but I can see why it's unnecessary. The like crowing scene, while it is an amazing scene, it didn't really need to be in the movie. But there was just an excuse to use a lot of really good editing. And them being in England does serve a purpose, because they do find out Facebook's over here too.
Yeah.
So it does serve that purpose. But I don't know. The Winklevoss, their whole existence just seems independent of everything else in the story, even though I know it's not, but just, I don't know. I'd say a little less of the Winklevoss twins. That's just me.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this has grown to be one of my favorite movies. It's in my top 20 of all time. And it's hard, to be honest, I was just rewatching it the other day, and I kind of had it on in the background just because I've seen it so many times. And it's really amazing how like time flies when you watch this movie. It just moves so quickly.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. Like, because I saw it was like a 2-hour film. It felt like an hour and 20.
Yeah, it just goes by so quick. And I don't know. I think everything in the movie belongs in the movie. There's nothing I would take out. There's no pointless scenes. Everything moves the plot forward. And for me, this is more or less a perfect movie. It does everything it needs to do. And I have a hard time thinking of anything I would change in this movie particularly. But yeah, I mean, that's, the points you guys made are totally valid, and overall a great movie. So before wrapping up today, Price, is there anything else you want to discuss, or did you have any questions for us regarding this movie or anything else?
I will say there's one question I kind of want to pose that I'm curious y'all's thoughts on it, and I can maybe share mine at the end. But as you've like watched it more times, do you think that like Ed Saverin handled the business side of it in a good way and was just kind of screwed over by Mark? Or do you think that there's things he should have done differently to be more of a part of the business?
I mean, to be honest, like I understood his frustrations with Sean Parker. He was kind of a questionable character. But that being said, some of his actions were a bit childish. I mean, he did freeze the account at one point, and there's a professional way to approach that. But again, I think by the end of the movie, I empathize with him the most. I think he definitely knew what he was talking about. And, at the beginning, he was really invested in the project, both financially and, just being there for Mark. And I don't know. It's just, I think I feel bad for him by the end of the movie in terms of how the movie portrays it. I don't think he acted too irrationally. I mean, understanding the emotions he was going through. That's just my take. What about you, Zach?
Yeah. I mean, that thing he handled with freezing the account, that was really petty, and there are better ways to handle it. I mean, I do think that if he was really as committed to the company, I do think that he should have been out there, I don't know, and like if Mark was going to California, I think Eduardo should have gone too. I don't know. But no, he really did get screwed over, though. That doesn't excuse how bad he got screwed over.
Yeah. I posed that question because I think the first, I would say, 1 or 2 times I watched this movie, my thoughts were just like
Mhm.
Mark is a jerk. Like Ed did everything that he could have. Like he did his best and just had like no wrongdoing. And kind of like rewatching it the most recent few times, like my opinion on that has started to shift a little bit. I mean, I definitely think that like
Mhm.
Mark was not kind to Ed, and like Ed deserved to have more of the company than he had by the end of the movie. But also just I think, I don't know, for Ed, he should have kind of realized like the direction that the business was taking and how quickly it was growing, and that kind of his role was changing from what it was at the beginning. And I mean, I think Sean came in, and Sean's not necessarily like a good person or someone who handled everything well because he made a lot of mistakes, but he
Mhm.
came in and told Mark everything he wanted to hear and provided him with things that Ed couldn't.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, I think it's an interesting balance. I mean, I
Yeah.
think Ed made a lot of good moves and was the partner that Mark needed at the beginning, but
Mhm.
I think he also was not necessarily equipped to deal with the quick growth that the company had, and could
Yeah.
have taken more steps and, like y'all were saying, been there in California with them and been
That's
in
true.
meetings more and communicating better instead of trying to go with his own ideas for
Mhm.
getting the ads so early on. So I think it's a balance, and kind of I think there's a lot more nuance to that relationship than I saw just
Mhm.
on my first one or two watches of the movie.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's true. Yeah, I don't think he wasn't as invested in the company as Mark was, or as he should have been, especially in the later stages. I also do think it's ironic that it was his idea to get some like people's attention in Palo Alto to get their attention at Stanford. Yet he wasn't the one who moved out to California, and he was the one who ended up getting screwed over in California.
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing about both Eduardo Saverin and Sean Parker in this movie is that it almost shows like two different types of thinking. Like Eduardo Saverin is more of the logical guy. He's wanting to play
Mhm.
it safe and wanting to see how he can make a profit. Whereas, Sean Parker, as annoying as he can be, he's the guy with the vision. He has more of an emotional mindset. He's like, what
Absolutely.
what can this be in the future? I think both mindsets are important when starting a business. So I
They
can
are
see
for
what you
sure.
mean about how each of them kind of bring something to the table as far as the business is concerned.
Yeah, absolutely.
Napster wasn't a failure. I changed the music industry for better and for always. It may not have been good business, but it pissed a lot of people off. And isn't that what your face smash was about? They're scared of me, pal, and they're gonna be scared of you. What the VCs wanted to say, good idea, kid. Grown-ups will take it from here. But not this time. This is our time. This time, you're gonna hand them a business card that says, I'm CEO, bitch.
Last thing before we wrap up today, if you came across someone who hadn't seen this movie and you wanted to convince them to watch it, what would you tell them? What would be your sales pitch?
Great question. I think just my sales pitch would be just like, if you want to watch a movie where you have one of the top directors and one of the top writers, both in their prime, just partnering perfectly for a movie with a great score, and you want to watch a story about entrepreneurship that's both inspiring and shows the dark side at the same time, this is the movie for you.
Yeah,
True.
for sure. What about you, Zach?
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, like it's written by Aaron Sorkin, probably the greatest living writer still working right now. David Fincher, high-level director, and yeah, it's the story about the like Facebook guy. Yes, it's heavily dramatized, but as he's becoming a more important figure, more powerful figure, this will give you at least a little insight into, if not him as a person, at least him as a character.
Mm-hmm.
And also, it's just an important story and about entrepreneurship, but also like it has an important message about being careful about who you align yourself with, about who you pick as your partner. Everyone has different strengths and weaknesses, but you better really do your homework about who you pick as a partner, because it may end up screwing you over at the end or just not being who you thought they were.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is something along the lines of, this movie is extremely well made. It's a movie that has both style and substance. As you guys have said, it has all the technical elements: writing, directing, acting, editing, score. But it's also a movie that just tells a really interesting story, and it tells it in the most entertaining way possible. And if you haven't seen it, I mean, just look at it it's a very relevant movie. It's about Facebook, which is a site that continues to grow every day. And, if you, for any reason besides just like how good the movie is, it's an important movie. And I think if you haven't seen The Social Network, you should check it out. I think it's an important movie. It's a great movie. It's entertaining. You know, I watch a lot of movies in my free time, and it's one movie I choose to watch at least like a couple times every year. So, if anything, it's worth revisiting.
You're not an asshole, Mark. You're just trying so hard to be.
And with that, we wrap up our discussion on The Social Network. I want to thank Price for joining us today. And from all of us from Cinema Convos, thank you for listening, and we hope you tune in next time.